Now, with the recent publicity on sexual abuse allegations all around town, all around the country, even all around the world, it's time for us to talk about the things that parents can do to reduce the risk of their children being assaulted. Now, Taiwo Akinlami is back with us this morning to talk to parents about how they can protect their children. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much.
And congratulations on the success of the Safe for Me conference that held last week.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being present there.
Yeah. So now, one of the biggest fear of parents is that their kids, either male or female, would be assaulted. Are these fears unfounded, or should we be afraid?
Well, I don't think we should be afraid because the protection of our children is possible, no matter how rampant sexual abuse is. The truth of the matter is that sexual abuse is very rampant these days. The report on violence against children says 1 out of every 6 girls suffer, sexual abuse. 1 out of every 10 of boys. So you find that, so if you have, so it's rampant.
Yeah.
But there's nothing to be afraid about because the people who abuse children are strategic. And so if you have superior strategy, there's no reason why we should not be able to, be ahead of them. The time they get to abuse children is when we let off our guards and we allow them to have their way. Now, the report has also found that people who abuse children are not strangers. 90%, 80% of the time, there are people that the children know, that the children trust. Most of the time, there are people that the children are handed over to look after. For example, I lost my virginity at the age of 6. That's the year I started primary school, and I was not sexually molested by a stranger. I was molested by a woman who my mother left me with when I returned from school. She was supposed to be a secondary caregiver. She was a neighbor. But you see, from my story, my mother made certain fundamental mistakes, which many parents are still making today.
So talk to us about, we don't have much time this morning, but hopefully maybe we'll continue next week. But talk to us about some of these strategies. You were talking about fundamental mistakes that your mother made.
Yes, the number one mistake that my mother made was that my mother never discussed with me about my sexuality. My mother never told me that if anybody made sexual advances to me, I could report to her. My mother also taught that...
But you were 6 years old.
Yes, I was 6 years old. You should start talking to a child. People have recommended that you start talking to a child from 18 months about our sexuality, his or her sexuality, beginning from names of understanding parts of the body, which are critical. But the mistake there again is that when we tell children that there's somewhere called private part, public part, as far as I'm concerned, every part of the child is private. Because you see, the fundamental thing is that nobody has the right to make any advance to a child without the consent of the parent. And when it comes to sexual advances, a child does not have capacity to give consent. So the child cannot give what he or she does not have.
So now, even any kind of touching. So it's not like...
No, because this is the point. When you tell a child that the private part is the penis and the vagina and all of that, but the person who wants to abuse a child sometimes groom the child, profiles the child and groom the child. It might not start from the vagina, it might start with the hand, start from the head. So we talk about necessary touch and unnecessary touch. This touch, is it necessary? Now, children go on holidays, 6 months, 6 weeks, their teachers have not seen them. So a female teacher sees a male boy, a male student, a male teacher sees a female student. Now, when you see the child, you come across and you hug. Now, because hugging has a meaning, because you've not seen the child for a long time, you must have missed the child. And the child is well grown, you give the child side hug. But when you hug every day, particularly as a secondary caregiver, parents are encouraged to hug their children. But particularly as a secondary caregiver, particularly older children, you have to be careful how you hug, how you get close, the kind of jokes you crack with them, the way you come across, the kind of things you tell them. Because you see, there are 4 things that the abusers do. 4. And parents need to understand that the first thing the abuser do is to profile. The abuser looks at the child that looks quiet, the child that is not likely to talk. After profiling, the abuser begins to groom. What is grooming? It is to get the child to be comfortable with the abuse and abuser. So it starts things like my wife, my husband, and all of those things. If a pedophile, an abuser told the child, from age 8, you are my husband, you are my wife, I'm your husband. Whatever husband or wife do, they do in secret. So this thing that I'm doing, don't tell anybody. And he did that successfully for 4 years, sexually molesting this child. The third thing the abuser does is the abuser now attacks. Abuser does not attack without false profiling, without false grooming, and at the end of the day, the abuser attacks. And the last thing the abuser does, the abuser manipulates through threat or manipulate through subtleness, telling the child, don't worry, I will take care of you, don't tell anybody. Or the abuser comes out straight. You tell anybody, I'll kill you, I'll kill myself, I'll kill your mother. Now, children need to understand that they have to speak up. One, parents must protect their children against abuse. For older children who are abused or for whatever, who are threatened, they must learn to speak up. So whether you are a child or you are a teenager, one thing you cannot afford to do is to keep quiet.
What do
you must speak up.
What do we tell our children then in this area? I like this idea of getting them to speak up.
Yes.
How do we encourage the child to speak up, and what are the things that we should tell the child to look out for?
Okay, number one, the child should look out for unnecessary touch. Number two, the child should look out for grooming in terms of touching, in terms of words, my husband, my wife, and all of those things. Children should understand that you cannot run around for an adult who is not your parent without the consent of your parents. Now, so your parents need to know where you are part time. And if a neighbor is calling you to say, come run around for me, come inside, you need to tell the neighbor that, please take permission from my parent. Parents also need to understand that a child is under the care of certain individual, and this certain individual must ensure that they are able to account for where the child is part-time. And not only that, now when it comes to speaking up, we found cases. Just last Saturday, we were in a matter where a father has been accused of sexually molesting the daughter. Fathers are now abusing their children, and that's becoming rampant. Now we have a case of a 12-year-old being sexually molested by her dad, and she's in a boarding school, and she went to tell them in boarding school, what can I tell my parents that I'm not going home, because the mom is aware. So what we need to do, therefore, is that children need to speak up. Now, when you if your dad is sexually molesting, you talk to your mom. If your mom does not listen, you talk to your teacher. Your teacher does not listen to you, talk to your religious leader. Just keep talking until somebody hears you. Silence is not an option, and nothing is going to happen to you if you speak up. For example, if you're in Lagos State, the Lagos State government is committed and dedicated to ensuring that every child that speaks up is protected. There's alternative care, there's medical care, there's psychosocial support. All of those things are available. There's no reason why our children must keep quiet. They must speak up against this scourge, because the impact of sexual abuse is eternal except there's divine intervention. Time will fail me to tell you my story of what happened to me, what I became as a teenager. I've gone into anal sex as a teenager. Today's parents call it homosexuality. As a teenager, I've taken my father's neighbor's daughter into my father's bedroom. I molested her sexually. When I became an adult, I was anything other scared. Prostitute on the road, prostitute on the street, prostitute anywhere. My life was just masturbation. If I felt like masturbating, I could go on the road and masturbate. My life did not take a new turn until I was 27, 1997, when I gave my life to Christ. And that was the beginning of transformation in my life. I'm work in progress, and that's why I'm passionate about things, because passionate about this thing, because I know the impact of this kind of exposure. And my abuse was avoidable, like every other abuse, because it is possible for us to protect our children from all forms of abuse if we pay attention and we are aware of what is going on.
Wow, thank you so much, Taiwo Akinlami. We'll have to end this conversation right now, but hopefully it'll continue on social media, and then we can also try to get you on the show at some other time to expand on some of these very, very important topics. But don't be quiet. Really, really important. That's one of the things that we learned today.